Good evening. Thanks for joining us on Business 360. I'm Shireen Bhan. The big stories that we're tracking for you this evening. The war in West Asia widens as airstrikes intensify across the region. Israel bombs Lebanon after the Hezbollah launches missile attacks. Kuwait reports several U.S. warplanes have crashed. Iran's Red Crescent says at least 555 people have been killed across the country. Iran rules out negotiations with the U.S. as the conflict deepens. President Trump vows to avenge the death of 3 U.S. service members and continue the mission till all objectives are achieved. Crude oil prices post the biggest rally in 4 years as investors fear major supply disruption at the Strait of Hormuz as Saudi Aramco refinery shut after drone strikes. Stock markets decline across Asia and Europe. The Sensex down over 1,000 points. Nifty drops below 25,000. The rupee declines by nearly 50 paise against the dollar, but RBI's intervention restricts the drop to 0.5%. Flights disrupted across West Asia. Several major nations suspend the use of their airspace indefinitely. Indian Airlines cancel flights to the Gulf till further notice. Hundreds of containers remain stuck at key Indian ports. 4 lakh tons of basmati rice exports stuck in transit. Nearly 10 million Indians are currently in West Asia as the war rages on. Around 3,000 Indian students are stuck in Iran. Prime Minister Modi calls the situation a matter of grave concern for India, says all conflicts must be resolved through dialogue. India and Canada reset their bilateral relationship with the visit of Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney. Canada agrees to supply uranium and work on building nuclear reactors in a landmark $2.6 billion deal. Both nations set a $50 billion target for bilateral trade by 2030. After completing a year in office, SEBI Chief Tuhin Kanta Pandey signals the intent to boost liquidity in the cash market and allow participation of insurers in commodities. Also aims to cut registration time for foreign investors to 5 days. Assures no new action on derivatives till the impact of earlier steps are assessed. As geopolitics rocks the market, Chris Woods of Jeferries says gold and energy stocks can be used to diversify portfolios. Predicts gold prices to hit $10,000 per ounce, even as he expects some near-term consolidation. That's an exclusive. India's automobile sector registers robust growth in February. Bajaj Auto, TVS, Tata Motors, Hero Moto all register double-digit growth on the back of sustained demand across passenger and two-wheeler segments. Well, the big story that we continue to track, the war in West Asia has widened as airstrikes intensify across the region. Israel launching strikes on Hezbollah positions in Lebanon earlier today, shattering a fragile truce that held for nearly a year. The Israeli military has said it was responding to attacks by Hezbollah. The Lebanese militant group has claimed responsibility and says it was avenging the death of Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah al-Khamenei, who was killed on Saturday in a joint U.S. operation in an Israeli missile strike. Lebanon's health ministry has said at least 31 people have been killed in the strikes. Now, the Kuwaiti Defense Ministry has said that several U.S. warplanes have crashed on its territory but confirmed that there were no casualties. The statement comes hours after Iran's state-run Islamic Republic news agency claimed a U.S. F-15 fighter jet had been shot down. Saudi Aramco's oil refinery in the city of Ras Tanura was temporarily shut down after a drone attack. Saudi authorities say the facility sustained minor damage from falling debris after 2 drones were intercepted near the site. Officials say supplies to local markets remain unaffected. President Trump has vowed to continue what he called a righteous mission against Iran until all objectives are achieved. He warned that more U.S. troop casualties are possible. However, in an interview to a news agency, Trump said, and I quote, "They want to talk and I have agreed to talk." Iran's security head, though, has said they will not negotiate with the United States in what has been the worst civilian casualty over the last 3 days. Iranian state media reporting that the death toll from a missile strike on a girls' school in southern Iran has now risen to 165. Iran's Red Crescent says more than 550 people have been killed, with strikes reported in over 130 cities across the country.
All over Iran, the voices of the Iranian people could be heard cheering and celebrating in the streets when his death was announced. The entire military command is gone as well, and many of them want to surrender into saving their lives. They want immunity. They're calling by the thousands. Combat operations continue at this time in full force, and they will continue until all of our objectives are achieved. We have very strong objectives. They could have done something 2 weeks ago, but they just couldn't get there.
What we are doing is, in fact, an act of self-defense and retaliation to the American aggression against us. We are not attacking our brothers in the, in the Persian Gulf. We are not attacking our neighbors, but we are attacking American targets. And this is obvious. The Americans, the United States military is targeting us, is attacking us, and we have no way but to defend ourselves.
This war is both intensifying and widening. A new front has now opened up in Lebanon. There have been some strikes from Hezbollah and a very strong response from Israel. A number of people have been killed in Lebanon, and Israel has announced that it will intensify its campaign across Lebanon. Israel has said also that it is considering a ground invasion. 100,000 reservists have been called up, and that is a pretty certain sign that this is going to be now a war that's going to be taken into Lebanon, and this will be at the ground level. In the air, it's not quite as predictable as one might have thought. Iran is managing to hit back and hit back effectively. On day one, an Iranian missile got through and hit Tel Aviv. A woman was killed. The following day, we had an attack on Beit Shemesh, on a synagogue. 10 people were taking shelter. 9 of them were killed. And that, again, is a missile that got through Israeli air defenses. There is also, of course, a widening of this war across the Gulf region. A lot of Iranian missiles have been hitting targets in Dubai, in other places in the Gulf. That is clearly an attack on the economic lifeline of these countries, and they are being targeted because they are seen as hosting US bases.
Well, that's our colleague Sanjay Sori reporting there from Tel Aviv, widening and intensifying, as Sanjay is reporting. Meanwhile, China and Russia condemning the killings of Iran's supreme leader and called for calm. The US allies have largely supported the strikes on Iran. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has allowed the US to use UK military bases in the region. Prime Minister Modi has said the situation is a matter of grave concern for India and has called for a resolution through dialogue. Take a look.
पश्चिम एशिया की वर्तमान स्थिति हमारे लिए गहरी चिंता का विषय है। भारत डायलॉग और डिप्लोमेसी के माध्यम से सभी विवादों का समाधान का समर्थन करता है। इस क्षेत्र में मौजूद सभी भारतीय नागरिकों की सुरक्षा के लिए हम सभी देशों के साथ मिलकर काम करते रहेंगे।
The United States has requested permission to use British bases for that specific and limited defensive purpose. We have taken the decision to accept this request to prevent Iran firing missiles across the region, killing innocent civilians, putting British lives at risk, and hitting countries that have not been involved.
Well, that's the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Now, crude oil prices posted the biggest rally that we've seen in 4 years as the war in West Asia sparked fears of supply disruptions. Natural gas prices have also surged as insurers have hiked premiums, cancelled policies, and shipping companies reroute their vessels from the Strait of Hormuz, which is not shut, but ships are not plying. Oil market watchers believe even if a ceasefire announcement happens, it may not necessarily result in a drop in prices immediately. Take a look.
I think the market will still remain extremely cautious in unwinding the risk premium because we have seen what route the diplomacy has taken and what results it has yielded, unfortunately, over the past few weeks. So no one is going to be betting or holding their breath for a very quick resolution, which means that we may again also see a start and stop of diplomacy and a military conflict. So I would expect perhaps a little bit of relief, a little bit of pullback in crude should there be a ceasefire and a return to the table, but not any meaningful drop in crude prices.
And stock markets across Europe and Asia declined on the back of tensions in West Asia. The Indian market also remained weak, with the Nifty ending below the 25,000 mark. Mid-cap index, though, swung nearly 2,100 points, while the Sensex fell over 1,000 points today. Barring defence, metal and the healthcare stocks, all sectoral indices closed in the red. Nigel is standing by to wrap up the market action for us. Nigel, very volatile, but off their intraday lows finally at close.
Well, the geopolitical conflict, that's the one that weighed on the Indian markets today. The concern is the crude supplies will get hurt, which in turn hurts India's import bill and shaves off a few basis points on growth numbers as well. The other concern is that the RBI will have limited headroom to cut rates. So today, the Nifty pulled back, crude oil prices did spike up, and the rupee weakened as well. But all of them were on expected lines. Well, the problem was that both the pillars of the market were under pressure. The Nifty Bank was down more than 2%. The Nifty IT index as well was down close to 100%. And the breadth of the market crumbled. Only one stock was advancing for every 6 stocks that were declining. The losers from the Nifty included L&T, as it has a decent amount of exposure to the Middle East. Interglobe, due to cancellations, and also ATF prices have spiked up. That's been input for them, so that's what will crunch margins. And Adani Ports as well was under some pressure. The winners were from the favoured defence as well as the metal sectors. Hindalco as well as BEL did well. And ONGC put on some weight as crude oil prices moved up. But that has a reverse impact in terms of OMCs, oil marketing companies. They got hit. Crude oil prices spiked up, and that's where you saw HPCL, BPCL, IOC, all of them were under pressure. Precious metal plays, though, did well. Gold Financer, Muthoot, that stock rallied. The only listed play from the silver space is Hindustan Zinc. That did well as well. And MCX, well, that outperformed BSE in today's session. Defence stocks, they're back in focus in light of the uncertainty on the geopolitical front. And that's why you had stocks like Solar as well as HAL, both of them rallied. While from the metals pack, Nalco as well as Vedanta, both of them were up in trade. So the Nifty's crucial support comes in at around 24,500. Investors have a day off on Tuesday due to Holi celebration. And by the time markets resume on Wednesday, investors will be hoping for de-escalation in the Middle East for the good of humanity and for their portfolios as well.
Nigel, many thanks. Now, the conflict in West Asia has also pushed gold and silver prices high as investors rush towards safe haven assets. Chris Wood of Jeferries says that gold prices will hit $10,000 per ounce, even as he does expect some consolidation in the short term. Here's Chris Woods.
In the medium term, I see big further upside in gold, but I wouldn't be surprised to have a period of extended consolidation. Gold can easily go to 10,000.
Oh, wow.
Because if you look at, I'm talking US dollar terms, so in US dollar terms, the growth of M2, you can easily get $10,000 on gold. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But my formal target based on is currently 6,600.
Well, a flight to safety there. Time for us to head to a break, but up next, nearly 10 million Indians are currently in West Asia as the war rages on. That and more when we return. Nearly 10 million Indians are currently in West Asia as the war rages on. The government has urged all Indian nationals in the region to shelter in place and avoid non-essential travel. Shivani joins us now with the details. Shivani, what does this mean for the Indian diaspora based in West Asia?
Well, yes, India has an estimated 9.6 million nationals living and working in West Asia, making it one of the largest overseas Indian concentrations globally. The UAE alone accounts for nearly 4 million Indians, while Saudi Arabia houses over 2.6 million. And even in Iran, currently at the center of the escalating tensions, around 10,000 Indians are estimated to reside. In Iran alone, around 3,000 Indian students, including nearly 2,000 only from the state of Jammu and Kashmir, remain in the country amid escalating violence, with roughly 1,100 to 1,200 of them in intense conflict areas, pleading for evacuation support from the government of India. Now, with multiple countries shutting down airspace and missile and drone attacks reported across parts of the Gulf, thousands of Indian travelers transiting through major hubs like Dubai, Doha and Abu Dhabi have faced cancellations and diversions. While there is no official consolidated figure, yet reports indicate that hundreds to potentially thousands of Indians are currently stranded due to flight suspensions. Transit travelers to global events like the World Mobile Congress or Umrah pilgrims in Makkah are facing disruptions. many unable to return home due to airspace closure and cancelled flight corridors. Now, the Cabinet Committee on Security has reviewed the difficulties faced by Indian travellers transiting through Gulf hubs. The committee also discussed concerns of Indian students scheduled to appear for examinations in affected countries, along with the broader economic and security implications of the conflict. The Ministry of External Affairs has issued advisories for Indians in Iran, Israel, Jordan, Qatar, UAE and Palestine, urging caution, avoidance of non-essential travel and vigilance. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar has spoken separately with his Iranian and Israeli counterparts, conveying India's deep concern and urging restraint. The MEA has reiterated that dialogue and diplomacy must be pursued and that sovereignty and territorial integrity of all states must be respected. Indian embassies in Tehran, Tel Aviv, Abu Dhabi and Damascus have activated helplines and remain in constant contact with Indian nationals. This is not just a travel disruption story. With nearly 10 million Indians in West Asia, any prolonged conflict impacts remittances, trade, aviation, energy flows and student mobility. New Delhi is closely monitoring developments as the region remains volatile. For a country with nearly 10 million citizens in West Asia, the stakes are enormous, and any escalation carries direct humanitarian, economic and diplomatic consequences. Back to you.
Shivani, many thanks. Yes, this is a serious challenge. Now, the Central Board of Secondary Education has postponed the board examinations for Class 10 and Class 12 for students in the Gulf. It was earlier scheduled for the 2nd of March. In a notice, the board has said the exams have been rescheduled to the 5th of March. Flight services across West Asia have also been disrupted as several nations suspend use of their airspace indefinitely. Indian Airlines have cancelled flights to the Gulf till further notice, leaving thousands stranded. It's not just aviation. Maritime transport has also been disrupted. Containers are starting to clog up all major ports in India. Santiago reports from the Jawaharlal Nehru Port Trust. The JNPT port in Navi Mumbai's exporters stare at financial losses.
The clearance for Indian containers meant for the Gulf region stopped on Saturday when the US-Israel-Iran conflict started. And since then, the containers at various ports in India, including JNPT and Mundra, are parked. And considering the nature, given the nature of the cargo, the exporters had no option but to park and plug in their containers. I'm being joined by a couple of drivers here. ये रहा प्लग पॉइंट और इस पे सब लोग आप ये जितने भी पॉइंट्स हैं इसके ऊपर आप अपने अपना कंटेनर लगाते हैं तो टेम्परेचर कंट्रोल के लिए सिस्टम स्टार्ट हो जाता है। जी जी। तो आप अपने कंटेनर में क्या कैरी कर रहे हैं? हम चपाती कर रहे हैं। कहाँ को जा रही थी? ये जेबेली के लिए जा रही। तो अभी आप क्या कर रहे हैं? इसका क्या करेंगे? आपने लगाया हुआ है कि निकाल दिया? नहीं, निकाल के अभी हम सब कंपनी जहाँ से लोडिंग करके आए थे वहाँ पे रिटर्न लेके जा रहे हैं। तो कितनी देर लगाया आपने ये? यहाँ 36 घंटा लगाए थे यहाँ। अच्छा जी। और आपका बिल कितने का दिखा रहा है अभी? 5215 रुपये का। 5000 से ऊपर का हो गया। जी जी। सर, आप जो हैं, आपका कहाँ पे कंटेनर जा रहा था? आपने क्या कैरी किया था? ये मैडम चपाती है मेरे लिए, रोटी। आप भी चपाती कैरी कर रहे थे? आपने भी लगाया था ये प्लग इन पे? प्लग इन किया था 36 घंटे। अच्छा, और ये कितने प्लग इन पॉइंट है इस लाइन में? 40 पॉइंट है मैडम। अच्छा, और एक प्लग इन पॉइंट पे 5 कंटेनर लग जा रहे हैं? हाँ, 5 कंटेनर। अच्छा, तो यहाँ पे और भी जगह पे ऐसे प्लगिंग पॉइंट्स वगैरह हैं? साइड में है, बगल में है। अच्छा, तो आप भी वापस ले जा रहे हैं अपनी गाड़ी? हाँ, वापस कंपनी में जाएगा।
Well, that's Santya at the JNPT, and this is a challenge now as maritime operations have also been disrupted. Exporters are staring at a period of uncertainty. Now, India and Canada have reset their bilateral relationship with the visit of Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney. Canada has agreed to supply uranium and work on building nuclear reactors in a landmark $2.6 billion deal. Both nations have set a $50 billion target for bilateral trade by 2030.
हमारा लक्ष्य है कि 2030 तक हमारा व्यापार $50 बिलियन तक पहुंचे। आर्थिक सहयोग का पूरा पोटेंशियल अनलॉक करना ये हमारी प्राथमिकता है। इसलिए हमने कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव इकोनॉमिक पार्टनरशिप एग्रीमेंट को जल्द ही फाइनलाइज करने का निर्णय लिया है।
The agreements today, we're going to expand our collaboration between the Canadian Space Agency and the Indian Space Research Organization on Earth observation, on climate monitoring, on generating the data that powers agriculture, disaster response, climate resilience across the Indo-Pacific.
And speaking exclusively to me on CNBC TV 18, Prime Minister Mark Carney said nuclear partnership with India is an area of priority. He promised Canada will be a reliable partner and will not weaponize trade.
As India seeks access to critical minerals for its manufacturing, its clean tech, and its nuclear plans, Canada's resource base and world-leading companies position it as a strategic partner. As one example, the nuclear agreement, the uranium agreement signed today. As another, the fact that 40% of the world's mining companies are listed in Canada. Today, we are launching a strategic energy partnership with significant potential to expand bilateral energy trade.
Well, that's Prime Minister Mark Carney. Remember, this is a crucial visit to reset the ties which had deteriorated, in fact, ruptured between India and Canada. This is the first visit of a Canadian Prime Minister in 8 years. Mark Carney resetting the relationship with India. With that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of Business 360. News will continue right here on CNBC TV 18. Stay tuned. We're back in a minute.